fashion star. Alright, our little branding word would be make your mark upon the fashion world, use your creative skills to design your clothes, and curate your brand in order to become the planet's top designer. We're going to divide the game into two modes. A static sort of first-person view, and where the player makes design decisions, builds their clothes, manages their wardrobe, materials, and accessories. So we'd like to give them as many options as possible, and they could tailor, fit, pick jewelry, accessories, scale the patterns onto the dresses, pick their textures, and there's also a kind of pattern mode. Where you can modify the dress's pattern by changing the structure of the dress, the cut lines, and that would modify sort of the dress in real time. And yeah, so that's the sort of the static first-person view, and that's your primary view. And we also have, throughout the game, we have graded challenge, and that sort of design view will get more complex, or the choices there will get more complex as the level go on, to the aim of actually kind of creating the design documents for an actual dress come near the end of the game. Now, there's also a secondary sort of mode, which is an isometric world view, where the player manages their business, interacts with clients, mentors, models, and store owners in order to meet orders, find materials, and gather, learn fashion lore and subtrades. So we wanted to have sort of a role-playing storyline, and it's divided into different studio locations around the world. So you start off in your own sort of small little one-person flat, maybe designing initial clothes and maybe Scat, something like that. And then your final destination would be in Paris or Milan or somewhere central to the fashion world. And every time you go up a level, you change location. So that's kind of what divides these level changes. And in order to go into the following level, there's sort of a main challenge in every location. And to accede to this main challenge, you have to have enough of both money and reputation. So those are kind of your, your main mana skill sets. And there are three ways to gather money and reputation. So by meeting new people, exploring your world, and having them teach you their craft. But also mainly by having what we call fashion offs. So runway competitions, kind of Zoolander style, and creating custom client dresses mainly. Yeah, so I wanted to maybe move on to one of the main narratives for like a level design. So the level's name would be, for instance, Tokyo Kimono, and there's not really a lost condition. You just can't exceed to the following level. You're now in Tokyo, your wardrobe skill sets, money, reputation follows you from LA, maybe your previous location. So you're exploring your new office, chatting with your new seamstress, and when a well-dressed man comes in, and he asks you to follow him to a location down the street, so you accept. You go down to street level, your isometric view at street level, and there you have a very basic, it's not like a world-spanning sort of a game, but you have a basic street view, and you can kind of go, there are different shops with maybe a dozen possibilities or other sort of smaller access points on that street. But at the end of this, so when you're walking down that street, you're kind of meeting people, people approach you, maybe they challenge you to a challenge fashion off. And then, well, you make your way down to the hotel, you meet, and for instance, in this case, since you're in Tokyo, it could be maybe like we had a daughter of one of the head of China's ruling Communist Party needs a kimono made, and it needs to be both respectfully traditional and contemporary with like a very strong Chinese accent in the jewelry or something. So we've just come up with very specifics throughout the storyline so that then they kind of have to go and search these out and gain enough experience in order to access the patterns for this kimono. And in order to do that, they have to meet some of the people in the world, and at certain points, initially, because they don't have enough reputation, they would be ignored. But as their reputation grows, or as they do maybe smaller customer jobs, then they're able to meet like the master mono makers and gain access to the better materials, similar to like most RPGs. And then you go back, and at the end of the game, you go back and, or whenever you have to build a client dress, you go back into your studio, into your static view, and that's that first drawing that we had shown. You have to fulfill this dress, and every time you have a client come to you, they're going to, once you finish that dress and you make it, and it costs you money in order to finally make it, the client then judges it, and if it's not what they had asked for, then you spend money for nothing, and you have to go back and make that dress again, maybe find other ways of making money. Yeah, that's the whole reputation diagram there. But yeah, that's kind of from Tokyo. You might go on to another level, so on and so forth. We're at the final kind of gala where this kind of finance princess shows off her dress. You get approached by a designer, and you accept to go to Milan now. So that's kind of how.
Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah, our teenagers will be tweens, so yeah, I guess that means a lot, but maybe probably like right on 12, 11, 10.
So I'm not sure. I understand. How do you like win?
You go from level to level. At the end of the day, I don't think there's like a final victory condition. You can complete the storyline like you do in most RPGs, right? And that could be like Paris, and then you can say, now you're the world's greatest fashion designer, there's no one to rival you, so on and so forth. But you keep the game open after that.
But like I don't. You do this fashion off, or you build it, or you make this dress. What's the condition of like winning? Does it have to have a certain number of buttons?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, that I kind of went through it briefly, but maybe I didn't touch upon because that's one of the more important parts of the game. They have very specific requests. For instance, in this case, you have to build a kimono, so you have to find the right pattern. Maybe there's, and again, if you look up kimono, then you'll find that there are tons of the whole historical kind of. You have to find the right one. You have to find the jewelry to match. You have to find the right patterns, by which I mean not textures, but just like the patterns for going.
So you have a selection to choose from.
Well, you have a lot of things that you have to go and find and buy in the world.
Specific items.
Yeah, specific items
Okay.
and skill sets in order to do. So that's kind of the whole RPG point of the game. So that kind of layers on top of your basic world building.
So you're not just freestyling.
Hmm?
You're not just freestyling.
You can freestyle. You build a dress, you bring it to her, but she'll refuse it, and you have to spend money for nothing.
Okay.
So that's kind of your loss condition in this case is spending that money and that time designing a dress, and she doesn't like it. So you can do that, and again, I don't think there'll be a limit on how many times you can do that. You just lose money doing it.
It seems to me like that decision shouldn't necessarily just be binary, but you know you might get a smaller number of reputation points if the client says this isn't really what I wanted, but I'll take it, versus if you've completely screwed up, or if the client says, wow, I love it, I'll tell you, I'll mention your name to all my friends.
That's probably what we want for some of the smaller challenges, but what I wanted to kind of lay out in this case is that there's always this, we're making it pretty simple. It's per level, there's one main challenge that's clearly laid out, and you realize pretty much at the beginning of that level.
Right.
And in this case, it's that the sort of the princess's dress, and so that is kind of just pass or fail, because you need to pass that in order to exceed the other level. But in most cases, you're right. I think when you do like a smaller dress, most of the times you might not get your money's worth, your reputation might not, if you do.
Yeah.
This,
This particular game idea has an unusual thing for most games, that in that you are trying to have the computer make aesthetic decisions about what's appealing or not. And the way you've chosen to handle that is by having the client have a hidden or partially hidden standard that you have to meet.
yeah.
And, of course, that means that the player needs to have some notion of what it is that they want. Because otherwise they're just flailing around. I hate trial and error game design. And there already is a fashion game out there for really little girls, and it's totally trial and error. And they just try everything for like hours, and I think personally that sucks.
No, well, that's what
So I think this is a better solution.
They kind of get to be about how you write that narrative, and how these kind of hints come out in the conversations. Like, again, lots of RPGs, but you want to, in this case, you can be very specific, and also, I think the idea would be to develop a design language as you go on throughout the game. So initially, they're saying these words that you might not, well, you're going to get introduced to them. So, like, I want these types of cuts, this type of, and so there's a lot to kind of learn there, which is always kind of the fun in RPGs when you kind of learn this, the difference between like the bastard sword or like the short sword or something. But this, you can multiply this to like a whole new level.
Right.
So.
That's clothing, yeah. Okay, we're out of time. Thank you very much.